Hello guys and welcome. It's been a couple months now since the game released on the EU and I already got my 700 out of 700 in bows, and for that reason I wanted to do an in-depth guide on them. What does this mean exactly? Well, for example, what type of content does each bow is more proficient on, the type of builds, the builds I've been using, and pros and cons about bows overall. Hopefully after this video you will know everything you need to know about the bows and find out whether it's the weapon of choice that you want to continue to pursue or are looking into pursuing. So with that said, let's get right into it. So let's begin with the very first bow, that being the normal bow. This bow is tremendously good for 1v1 PvP content. For example, corrupted dungeons. This is a tremendously very powerful weapon in that type of content. It can also be used in ganking groups, but not very often, and also used for Avalonian raids as a DPS single target role. It's not commonly used for any of those things though. It has its very powerful space in corrupted dungeons, and sometimes you actually see it on the mists as well. Normally people will take these abilities differently according to the situation they're fighting, and I will explain that here in a moment. This will also apply to all other bows. I will jump into more detail about that here in a moment. So the abilities that you normally will see on the normal bow would be the multi-shot, the frost shot if you are on the open world, or the ray of light. Depends again on the situation. You will also notice that a lot of people take explosive arrows, especially when doing PvE content. For the passives, you either take energetic, which is every auto attack restores 5 energy, or you take piercing arrow. Again, it depends a lot on the content. If you're doing PvE, it's normal for people to take piercing arrow as it helps to reduce the mobs defenses, therefore killing them faster. If you're doing PvP, normally they take energetic, but piercing arrows still works for a PvP situation. For the chest, you will normally see the normal bow using a mercenary jacket with a cooldown rate passive. For helmet, you can either see them on Purity Cowl or you will see them more commonly on the Hunter's Hood with a Balanced Mind passive. And for shoes, you will commonly see people running any plate shoes. On an instance, I'm just putting the demon boots, but you are taking plate shoes just for the rejuvenating sprint. And you take the tenacity passive to increase your crowd control resistances. Now for the cape, you will have two options. You either take the Limhurst for that mana or the Thetford. Now, it is most commonly seen with the Thetford cape because again, it's mainly used for corrupted dungeons. Now this is what you normally would see in a PvP scenario. The weapon playstyle is very similar like any other bow. You use your W to maintain distance from the enemy. Remember that frost shot, if you manage to land it on them when they jump on you or anything like that, it slows them by 40%. And once you use a slow shot after they use a dash or anything like that, you use your Q to maintain the distance between yourself and the enemy. Then the E on the normal bow is a very powerful ability because it enhances your next basic attacks. At first, it enhances up to 6 basic attacks and increases your attack speed and physical auto-attack damage by 220%. That's crazy. And then you can reactivate it again. I'm sorry about my dog in the background. It's allowing you to enchant 4 more arrows. So how would this look like? Let's say that the enemy is engaging on me. I create a space. I keep it in a distance. I press my E and I engage while moving. And as soon as I finish using my enchant set, I press E again and I continue to attack. The next bow is the Longbow. The Longbow is mainly used for group content and, to be more specific, group PvE and CVC content. This is guild versus guild, big amounts of people against a big amount of people. Now, why is that? The weapon is very strong because it dashes out a lot of damage very quickly. The abilities that you will normally take will be Deadly Shot because it decreases the damage resistances, Explosive Arrows, and Rain of Arrows. For the passive, you'll normally take Piercing Arrows because for the build, you will normally take the Limb Hardscape. Now, let me show you. On your chest, you will be taking the Cleric Rope, and I will explain why here in a moment. You will either take the Royal Sandals for that 15% increased damage, or you will take the Stalker Shoes because it increases your damage by 8% for each blink you do. In this case, we will take the Stalker Shoes. I personally prefer them over the Royal Sandals. Now, for your helmet, you're going to be taking the Knight's Helm, or as a secondary option, you can take the Purity Cowl. In CVC content, the role of the Longbow normally is to use the Knight Helm either defensively or offensively. It does not matter. It is really important ability because it helps you and your team stay alive by displacement immunity, which is super important and crucial on CVC. Now, how does this work exactly? Well, let's say that you are on the battlefield and you have a caller, and the caller is saying we're looking northeast and they're about to clap. So you're about to clap. They say at the start of the countdown, we're clapping in 3, 2. You start running towards where the clap is about to happen. Boom, boom. You press W. You press R. And then you press E. And you dash an crazy amount of damage. Obviously, all of that quickly has to be done quickly. And as soon as you finish, you can either press your 9 helm to retreat, or you already press your 9 helm to go in to the fight, right? So let's try to look at this in a more faster way. In this scenario, I am training with my guild as a bomb squad. We have the enemy on the top right corner. My caller is screaming, we're going in a certain amount of time, and I gotta catch up. I have the wrong shoes, but nevertheless, let's put that aside. You can see how in action, here comes the call, the clap happens, and boom, the Longbow's damage just immediately lands, and you can see it. You can pay attention right here to the Longbow and just watch how quickly, everything is already closing, and the Perma is already there. And the Longbow is already the first one delivering the damage. It's absolutely crazy, right? So that's why it's commonly used, because of how quickly it can dash out the damage, right? At the same time, you can actually compare that to the Brimstone. The Brimstone just fall, and by the time it's falling, the Longbow already finished delivering all of the damage that it had to deliver, right? Like that's the beauty about the Longbow. Now, let me give you the reason why people take the Cleric Rope. You normally press the Cleric Rope right before you dash out the damage, because it's very common for the enemy to have demon armors. So let me show you what happens when you don't. In this scenario, we are coming and we know there is a group of enemies down here to the southeast. We're about to go ahead and clap them, but I want you to pay attention to the enemy immediately spots us and sees that we had and immediately puts their demon armor. The demon armor is that red shield that you see around, and I, because I was new on the moment, was not aware what that represented. I should have pressed R right before I dash out the damage. So if you pay attention and see what happens, boom, I died immediately, and it took just a millisecond for that to happen. But watch very, very carefully. What would have happened if I had pressed my Cleric Rope right before I pressed my E? You see that? Yes, I got hit, right? But that would have proced the rope, my defensive, and it would have allowed me to continue to dash the damage for the rest of the channel, right? Boom, I die. At the end, we managed to bomb them. We kill all of them, no problem. But at the cost of some of us almost dying and me actually dying, right? So that is why you take the Cleric Rope. Now, moving on, let's go ahead and talk about the Warbow. The Warbow is one of my very most favorite weapons in the game. It's super enjoyable for roaming, for mists, for corrupted dungeons. It can do a little bit of everything. It can do ganking as well. It's just super, super fun. The build I like to take with the Warbow is as follows. Let me just go ahead and finish grabbing everything real quick, and I will tell you exactly how it looks like. It looks something like this. You take the Purity Cowl, taking the third ability, the Valonian Beam, and you take the Aggression passive. For the Assassin's Jacket, depending the enemy, you either take Inferno Shield or Ambush, and then take the cooldown passive. For the shoes, the same thing. You only taking a plate shoes because of the rejuvenating sprint. You don't need the demon boots. The demon boots normally for the BADON. Now, and for the cape, you take the Undead cape. For the damage dealing, if it's an enemy that is a melee enemy, you take the first Q. If it's a enemy that outranges you, for example, a fire staff or something like that, you take the deadly shot. If it's a enemy that, for example, a spear that has range, but it doesn't necessarily needs to be like a melee range, you take the poison arrow. You can take the poison arrow and deadly shot for ranged enemies, and that would be up to you. But for melee, it's very important that you take the multi-shot. For ranged enemies and your W, you take the Ray of Light. For melee enemies, you take the Frost Shot. No, like 100%. There's no question about this. For melees, you better be always on Frost Shot. And your E, well, is your E. And the same thing as we said before. If you're taking the Limb Cape, you can go with a Piercing Arrow. If you're taking the Dead Cape, I would recommend you stay on Energetic because it does consume quite a bit of mana. In essence, the bow is super simple. You wanna just kite the enemy as much as possible while throwing your E and your Purity Cowl, right? That's how it looks normally. If you fight against somebody that is melee, super aggressive, that has multiple dashes, so for example, a Bloodletter, then you wanna make sure you have your force field. Why? The enemy is very likely to dash into you as fast as they can. This can be by the access when they switch their abilities, or like I said earlier, a Bloodletter. You want them to stay away from you, and you always want to make sure you trade your abilities properly. What do I mean by this? You do not, if an enemy is sprinting at me, I want to sprint at the same time. I want to have my cooldowns reset with them. So if a Bloodletter is chasing me and he's chasing me with a sprint, I sprint. If the enemy dashes, I push him away. If he dashes again, I use my W. And I keep my distance. This way, my cooldowns are set in a way that every time he has to use any of those abilities that close the distance, I have already an ability ready to maintain the distance. This is fundamental in all bows, because majority of bows you can take them for PvP and mists and corrupted and so on, but this is the biggest fundamental part about bows. If you fail to do this, you're dead. If somebody's sprinting at you and you decided to use Frost Shot first, you're dead. If he has a dash, he will catch up to you. The guy sprinting at you, you sprint. The guy dashes at you, you push him away. That is the most important part about bows, but it is also the downside of it. Because of all of this, it's very hard to, when you're fighting an enemy and dealing a lot of damage and they decide to run away, it's very hard to chase after them and finish them off. That's one of the downside of bows. All right. The alternative helmet for this would normally be either the Hunter's Hood or the Spectre Hood. There is a lot of people who like to take the Spectre Hood so they can play in a cheese way where they are fighting the enemy. And let's say I'm fighting right here, the enemy comes, boom, I get him. I use my cooldowns, he jumps on me. I don't have any escape because I don't have Frost Shot, but what I do have is my R. So I wait for my cooldowns, I get the buff here on the top left corner, and boom, I hit him again, I do the damage, press my jacket and go invis again, and I can wait for my cooldown sit again. If the enemy makes the mistake to stick around, it's very likely that you will chase him and kill him, no problem. It's a fun build, but it's a very cheese build and it's easy to counter. but a lot of people do enjoy it. All right, moving on. We have the Whispering Bow. The Whispering Bow is a lot of fun and used in different types of content. You can find it on Corrupted. You can find it on mainly PvE. I will say I find it. I mean, I find it more useful in PvE, single target PvE. So, for example, red zone, capping, faction capping. I don't know if you know what that is. If you don't know, I can tell you in the description below because it's kind of hard to explain. But it's a very good weapon. It is extremely good in 1v1s. But it has its own downsides, right? What you will normally see on this weapon is either deadly shot or poison arrow. But more importantly, explosive arrows with the undead arrows is insane. So this is the build that I personally like to take. You take Hellion Jacket for the smoke bomb and Balance of Mind passive. You take Morgana's Cape. You take the same, like any boots really that just give you the rejuvenating spirit, or you could go even Royal Sandals for just a massive amount of damage. Then you go Hunter's Jacket for the haste and the cooldown passive. And right here you have a monster of a build. For the weapon, you can take, like I said, Deadly Shot, Poison Arrow, Explosive Arrows, and energetic. You can either take energetic, which is going to be super useful, but on this case, because we want to do as much damage as possible, we're going to be taking piercing arrows. How does this work? You are on a 1v1 against somebody. You go on ahead and start engaging. The enemy comes at you and you just get nearby to him, press your W, press your R, E into the bombs and just start attacking like a madman. And the amount of damage you do dash out on this little combo is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane, the amount of damage you do just doing this. You can easily, like, in the full combo, kill somebody, no problem. And for that same reason, this is why it's really used for single target PvE content. So when you're going for example, Avalonian raids and stuff like that, it's common to see it in there alongside the normal bow for the single target as a swap, right? Against the bosses that you can, melt down a single target and stuff like that. It's a fun weapon and very strong, and it has a massive range. Like, watch this. If I go all the way over here, look at that range. That's insane. That's crazy, the range that it has. Absolutely brutal. It's a lot of fun of a weapon, but that's all you have, right? Like, if you remove the poison, the explosive arrows, you can put something else, but the damage you do with explosive arrows is crazy. It's crazy. All right. Moving on to one of my favorite bows. The Wailing Bow. The Wailing Bow is one of my favorite bows. It's a shame that not a lot of people use it, but this one is exclusively used for CVC. It sucks on PvE and on any other content that is not PvP. For 1v1s and stuff like that, it sucks. For CVC, it's super good. You either see it with an Assassin's Hood because it has a long cooldown on its E. It has it's a very, very, very long cooldown. So you want it to get, like, you want to have your E up at all times, right? It recently got buffed. It was 30 second cooldown and it got now to 25 seconds cooldowns, right? You either see it with a Royal Jacket, so when you finish the clap, people like to use it to reset the cooldowns of everybody else, or you will see it on a Cleric Rope just to maximize the damage output because of the bonuses you get as a rope user, right? For abilities, you will take explosive arrows, deadly shot, and piercing arrows. How does it work is you fire your E at multiple enemies, and you can see each time it passes, it does more damage. Sadly, there's not a fourth enemy here, so you can see how much more damage it does when it hits the fourth person. But the damage is ridiculous. Why do you take an explosive arrow? Because it actually procs with your E. When you fire that E and hits a bunch of people, imagine you're doing some CVC and there's a massive blob right there all together. You can fire this thing and it does insane amount of damage. I wish I could show you some clips. Sadly, I forgot to record on my last CVC. but you will normally take for these either royal sandals if you're brave for that extra 15% increased damage. So you will just run in and boom, and massive amount of damage, absolutely crazy. And then, or you will take the Graveguard boots, boots, because when you use them, you are immune to stuns, roots, and slows, and cleans all crowd control effects from you, right? So it's super, super good. You see the clap, and you just go in and ready to engage. You finish engaging, boom, you reset your cooldown, and you're almost, sorry about that, you're almost ready to go on again, right? It's a really enjoyable weapon. I really have a lot of fun with it, but it's not currently part of the meta, and very, very, very few, what's the name, CVCs or guilds out there actually use it. All right, moving on to the next one. The next one being the BADON. The BADON has a lot of really cheesy, fun builds that you can use. So let's go ahead and start with that. Let's go ahead and take that, and that. And the build that I personally like to take is I take the Assassin's Jacket with Purity Cowl and any plate for that, right? Like this is what I normally like to take, and with the Undead, because I'm just using it with the old playstyle. I'm not really that creative with this weapon. When I take it, normally it's just to PvE in the Mist or Abyss, right? Because the AoE damage is super good to clear up a bunch of mobs, right? It does really good damage over time, so I put them all together and put it, right? So it's overall a good weapon. Now, with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and link right on the description below some YouTubers who play very freaking good with this weapon, that being Dos Santos and Gorgeous Paul. Though I'm gonna go ahead and show you their builds. Dos Santos likes to take this weapon to the Avalonian roads. Reason, because on the Avalonian roads you have very small paths, right? So people will chase you down a small path, and then what he likes to do is that he drops a trap right there. The enemy falls for it, and then he uses its E and spam its Q. So what does that do? He uses the Adept's Skin Cap that has the ability Bear Trap, and the first enemy stepping on the trap will start to bleed, taking 240 physical damage over 3 seconds and slowed by 90%. So that allows him to dash out the full damage of its Raging Storm ability. So it's a fun little build. Now, the other build that I've seen used a lot with a lot of success is by Gorgeous Paul. He takes the Cultist Cowl, he takes the Hellion Jacket, and on the Demon Boots, he takes the third passive, the Vengeful Spirit. He plays this in a very passively way. You gotta have a lot of patience and experience for this fight, because all he does is that he's dashing constant damage all the time. He uses his abilities to dash damage, right? And he uses the Hellion to stay alive, so he's constantly dashing damage. And as lower and lower he gets of health, he waits to have like 2 bars of health, and then he pops the boots and then dashes again his Raging Storm to finish off the enemy. It's a really interesting strategy. It's super complicated. It's very hard to explain how it works. So I will leave his a link to his YouTube channel on the description below. And yeah. So now moving on to the last bow, which is the Mistpiercer. Mistpiercer is also used a lot on CVCs. It takes the Scholar Rope, and it takes also the Morgana Cape and the Assassin's Hood. For shoes, it will normally take a Graveyard Boots, or it will even take the Royal Sandals. So here lies the problem with the Mistpiercer. Mistpiercer is a very powerful weapon because it dashes out a lot of damage. So I'm gonna go ahead and use it. As you can see, it takes the same abilities. You want the Explosive Arrow because it procs with its E, and you want the Deadly Shot, right? So let's say we're on a CVC, we're calling for the clap, or the enemy is coming. I go ahead and press my R, which is the Scholar Rope. to increase the cast speed because the E of the Mistpiercer is very slow. So I'm just gonna show you a comparison. If I use it just like that, boom, boom, boom. That obviously that was also procced by the cape, right? So it's not really a perfect demonstration, but nevertheless, I'm gonna wait for the cooldown and show you again how it looks with the Scholar Rope. So you can have an idea of how quickly it dashes out its damage. Alright, so now let's go ahead and do it. We got the cooldowns and I press my W, R into E. And boom, you got that damage. Look at the amount of damage. It's absolutely insane. But I want you to really think right now, before I say it, what's the problem? I showed you a demonstration of the longbow. What happens if you don't use the cleric rope to be able to protect yourself when you're dashing out damage? Now, the problem with the Mistpiercer is exactly that. You need to use either the Morgana Cape or the Scholar Rope to be able to be there at all times, right? So the Morgana Cape helps you to dash out what's the name? Your damage when you don't have your Scholar Rope available, but the Morgana Cape has a 2-minute cooldown, right? And the Scholar Rope has a 35-second cooldown. Therefore, you are forced to use the Assassin's Hood to be able to reduce off cooldowns to always be ready to fight and deliver the damage, right? So you are left out without any defensives that can defend you from that demon armor. So if any of these 3 enemies in front of me were to have a demon armor and it's protecting the 3 of them, boom, I'm dead right there. I am dead. So that is the problem with the Mistpiercer, and that is the reason why a lot of people don't take it and rather take something like the Longbow instead. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I hope that this video was useful. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching it, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them on the description below. I will be more than happy to reply to all of them. I am Tote Torres. It's been a pleasure talking with you guys. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and I am streaming every single day. So if you have any doubts or anything like that and you catch me online, feel free to ask them right there, and I promise you I will reply. So thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.